Hi, folks. Mike Rosso here. Today. So even though this camera says Bell & Howell Electric Eye, that's all it says. There's no other information on this camera, no year. But I did some research online, and apparently some eBay auctions comes with the booklet, and it actually says Bell & Howell Model 312DF. This is an 8mm film camera. It takes double 8 film. I'm going to go through the functions of it very quickly. The most important thing to know about this camera is that it's fully automatic. So it has an internal light meter, which is right here. It's a selenium light meter. This actually controls the aperture of your camera, meaning the lens will close down or open up depending on what lighting conditions you're in. You would set the ISO. Back in the day, it was called ASA, the speed of your film. You would set it right here. And modern films are 40 ISO, and that is the highest speed film you could use in this camera. For digital shooters, it's important to know that the ISO rating is your film that you use in the camera. It cannot be changed. It cannot be altered once you select the roll of film that you're going to use in this camera. So here's your electric eye, senses the light, sets the aperture. So the way to do a test is to take a flashlight, or you could either, point the camera down, then point it up to an open window, but somehow put a light source so you could watch to see if the aperture changed. Oh, you see that, John?
I'm John.
Okay, so that's telling you that this camera works. Now, if this light meter, internal light meter, was burned out, then your aperture would not move at all, which means that you should not shoot the camera because it's not going to expose your film.
There's no way to set the aperture?
This particular camera and some other models out there have no manual override whatsoever. It is only a automatic camera. And if you're sourcing another automatic camera, I highly suggest you look for a model that has a manual override on it. For example, here's a Nikon camera that is also fully automatic, but up here on the side, see, here's the same thing. Here's the aperture that sets automatically, but this one has an override, and you can set it to M, manual, and you see that? You could set your aperture manually. Now, the clue that this camera, this Bell & Howell Electric Eye, worked was that when I received it, it was in its case, which kind of tells me, that, I just had a hunch that, the camera's been in the case for 60 years, not being exposed to light. What kills is, when someone just, puts it like the workbench in the garage, John? Mm-hmm. And, the guy the dad just puts it on there, and then it just bakes there for 60 years. The selenium cell is continually exposed to light, and over the years, it just burns it out. On this camera, there is focusing. It is not through the lens focusing. So when you look through the eyepiece, you're not looking through the lens. You're just looking through what's known as a parallax. Look at that. See that mystical symbol right there?
That's a triangle.
Yeah. That's Bell & Howell's telling you that, if you're outside, just set it to the triangle and then just shoot everything. For focusing, you're doing a guesstimate focus. You could use the triangle to set a basic if you're outside. You may say, they're 6 feet away. This is a pretty decent lens, has an f1.8 is the widest. Here is a zoom. On this side of the camera, here's your film compartment. I'm going to test load it in a second. Viewfinder. Yes, footage counter. Use the footage counter. When it's at end, it's time to flip your film. You shoot your film twice through this camera. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Here is a crank. This camera takes no batteries whatsoever. It's simply you wind it up, and you wind it up gently until it kind of just stops. And you will get about 30 seconds of footage per wind. Here is your shutter button. You also could do frame by frame if you want to put it on a tripod and, you want to do an animation at home.
Stop motion.
Stop motion. Thank you, John. This camera runs at 16 frames per second. Your film is being exposed 16 times per second to create your movie. Okay, so here's your film compartment. Film goes here. There are arrows in this camera. It says full spool here. You follow the arrows. It goes in through the film gate. Here's the film gate. And what this is called a pressure plate.
Pressure.
Film goes through there, and then this pressure plate sandwiches your film in your gate so that when you're shooting, it's exposing, your frames. Here's your film. Film is light sensitive, which means that once you load it in your camera, you should not open up your film compartment until the roll is done. If you constantly open up your film compartment while shooting, you will be exposing your light sensitive film, and you will fog your film. Okay, so here's your take-up spool, and here is your feed side one. The film only goes on one way. The light sensitive part, the dull side, always faces the lens. The shinier base faces away from the lens. I've been using a new technique of loading, which is pretty easy. Take your take-up spool, make sure it's the right way. Make sure it's on your take-up spool. And now you follow the arrows, put your film spool on the feed side, open up your door, film in between the pressure plate and the film gate.
Pressure.
Film on the take-up hub. Make sure your film is properly seated. See that? See these things here? Make sure your film is properly seated. Great. Close the pressure plate.
Pressure.
Look at that. Let's see if it worked. Don't worry about this. This is not spinning because this is just a test roll. There's not really much film on this spool. That's why this is not spinning. So, great. Put your door on. So, when you're done shooting side one, let's take a look at your film. There it is. Okay, so you shot this roll. Now, you're not finished because this is what's known as double 8 film. So if you noticed, your film is rather wide, much wider than 8mm. And that's because this camera shoots 2 images side by side per roll of film. And once you run your film through your camera once, and you're done, you remove it, flip it, like so. Great. Take your spool, which was full, that is now empty, and you will flip it. Terrific. And now you reload. And you'll be shooting the second side of that strip of film. So you do the same thing. And as you can see, once you get the hang of this, easy. Oh.
Oh, yes, I'm John.
It's important not to stress out when you're loading your film. You could be, outside, duck behind a tree, go somewhere where there's shade, get the film on the take-up spool, hopefully. The film gate's open. Put your film, like you did the first time, on the post, in between the pressure plate and the film gate.
Pressure.
On the post. Wait, yeah, okay. Make sure your film is properly seated. Very important. Ah, you see that? All right, so now side 2 is loaded. Now, I'm guessing you can't put the door on if the pressure plate is open.
Nope,
Shit.
not good.
John Fideli saves the day.
Yes, I'm John.
Oh,
It closed it.
it closed it.
Look at that.
Holy smokes. So, okay, very good. Whoa.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Okay, so now we're done shooting side 2. Take off your door. Open up your pressure plate.
Pressure.
Take your film and put your film back in its black bag or tin that it came in, and hopefully send it to the Film Photography Project for developing and scanning. And there you have it. Put your take-up spool back where it belongs. Remember, the take-up spool that was in your camera that's empty will be empty when you're done shooting your film. And that's really it. The ISO, also known as ASA if you're film, you have to set that. 40, the Film Photography Project sells color and black and white film. That's 40 ISO. There is also some film available that's higher ISO and is not recommended for this camera. That's really it. I hope you enjoy it. There are thousands and thousands of these cameras out there. Some of them are going to have dysfunctional light meters, so they will not be working. Those are best to just put on your shelf. The great thing about this camera is they're very inexpensive. And look for one on eBay, or if you see one in a thrift store, make sure it's in its case. If it's not in its case, if you can get your hands on it, you can do a test right there. Remember how to do the test, and you'll be ready to shoot your home movie.